Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're doing something a little different. Instead of our usual sources, we're looking at a fascinating, a really detailed set of notes from a gardener.
A very analytical gardener.
Extremely. And the focus is on plant propagation, specifically trying to root Bougainvillea cuttings, which
Yeah.
are just notoriously difficult.
Right.
And this isn't some beginner's guide. We're jumping straight into a case study. The gardener's first try had, and I'm quoting here, mixed results.
Which is a very polite way of saying it mostly failed.
It is. So they
Yeah.
documented everything, figured out what went wrong, and then they engineered this really scientific round two.
And that's our mission today, right?
Yeah.
To break down those adjustments.
Exactly. It's a blueprint for how knowledge and managing risk, not just luck, are what lead to success in gardening or, pretty much anywhere else.
What I love about these notes is that commitment to iteration. I mean, anyone can stick a branch in the ground and hope for the best. But the leap from that simple first attempt to this highly controlled second one, that's what separates a hobby from a real skill. This really shows you why certain techniques are so important for tough plants.
And that's the key context here. Why Bougainvillea? Why did that first simple method fail so badly?
It's a critical point. A lot of people have experience with, say, basil or coleus cuttings. Those are softwood, they root, if you just look at them.
Right.
Bougainvillea is different. You need to use mature, lignified wood.
Lignified meaning woody.
Exactly. Woody cuttings are tough. They have thick bark. Their job is structure, not making new plants. They have a very limited amount of stored energy.
So it's a race against time.
It's a race against time. Once that energy is gone, it's gone. The cutting dies. So your strategy can't be passive. It has to be targeted, aggressive, and fast.
Okay, that sets the stage perfectly for attempt one. What did the gardener actually do in that baseline trial?
Well, the first approach was very simple. It focused on just one standard mechanical technique.
Minimal prep.
Minimal prep. They took the cuttings, no chemicals, and they just focused on the bottom of the basil end and gave it a sharp 45-degree angle cut.
And the 45-degree cut, that's standard practice, right? Sounds like the right thing to do.
It is foundational, yeah, and for good reason. That angle does two things. First, it maximizes the surface area that's touching the soil for water absorption.
Okay.
And second, that bigger surface gives you more potential spots for roots to actually emerge. It's a good start, but for a woody cutting, it's just not enough on its own.
Because right after that cut, they put them straight into what, regular garden soil?
Regular garden soil, and left them in an open, shaded space.
Which sounds like a death sentence now that you've explained the energy issue.
It creates three immediate risks the cutting just can't handle. You've got an open wound.
Because the cut is a wound.
A major wound, yeah. And you're putting it in soil that's dense, doesn't drain well, and is full of pathogens, and the air around it is completely uncontrolled.
So what was the main killer in that first attempt?
Almost certainly desiccation, drying out. In an open space, the cutting loses moisture from its leaves and stem way faster than it can absorb any.
Since it has no roots.
Since it has no roots, it basically it runs out of water and energy long before any roots can form.
Yeah.
That first attempt relied entirely on the plant being strong enough to save itself in a hostile environment.
Which it wasn't.
Oh.
So the notes for round two read like a direct counterattack on those risks.
That's a great way to put it. It's a three-part strategy. Optimize the cutting itself, give it a chemical boost, and then completely engineer the environment around it.
Okay, let's unpack this. Starting with the cutting itself. They kept the 45-degree cut, but they added a crucial step they called wounding. What does that actually mean?
Wounding means very carefully stripping away some of that protective outer bark, that brown woody layer near the base of the cutting.
Why? What's the goal?
The goal isn't just to peel it, it's to expose the very delicate inner ring beneath it, the cambium layer.
The cambium layer. You hear that term a lot. Can you explain for us why that specific green and white layer is the target?
Absolutely. The cambium is, well, it's the plant growth engine. It's where all the new cells are made.
Hi.
The xylem that carries water up and the phloem that carries sugars down.
Okay.
When you wound it and expose that cambium, you trigger the plant's emergency repair system. And that response, especially when you add the right hormones, makes it create undifferentiated cells that can become roots. You're basically forcing its hand by making it vulnerable.
And I love this detail from the notes, the tool they used to do it. A fruit slicer?
Yeah.
It sounds so weird, but what was the thinking there?
That choice tells you everything about the precision needed. The notes say it was safer than a grafting knife. A knife can slip, you can gouge too deep, cut right through the vascular system.
And ruin the whole cutting.
Ruin the cutting. A fruit slicer? If you're careful, lets you just shave or scrape that outer bark off with much more control. You want a clean, shallow exposure, not a deep gash.
Because this wounding, as you said, it introduces a huge trade-off.
A massive one.
Let's dig into that trade-off, because this feels like the core of the problem. You're wounding it to help it grow, but you're also taking away its armor.
Exactly that. You are seriously boosting the potential for root formation, but you're creating an immediate, very high-stakes risk.
Two risks, right?
Two main threats. First, infection. That exposed moist cambium is a perfect entry point for fungus and rot from the soil. And second, and even more immediate, is desiccation. That living tissue will dry out incredibly fast now.
So if the wounding is the aggressive part, the next two steps have to be all about defense. They're about mitigating those risks you just created.
Precisely. There are two halves of one strategy. The wound opens the door for opportunity, and the next steps build the protective framework around it.
Okay, so let's get to the second change, the chemical aid.
The chemical edge. Right after wounding, they applied a commercial rooting hormone. The timing is vital.
And on a cellular level, what is that hormone actually doing to that exposed cambium?
Rooting hormones are basically synthetic auxins. Auxins are like the signal callers in a plant. When you put them directly on that wounded cambium, you're flooding the area with one specific instruction. Start dividing cells to make roots. Now,
So it's not just healing, it's healing with a purpose.
exactly. It makes sure the plant's repair response is directed toward forming roots, not just callousing over like a scar. It dramatically speeds up the process, which is everything when you're racing against that ticking clock of stored energy.
And then there's the medium, a subtle change, but a really important one. They switched from regular garden soil to regular potting soil.
Right. Most people might think soil is soil, but this is a huge change.
Because that garden soil from attempt one had everything the cutting didn't need. It was dense, wet, and full of bacteria and fungi.
It's a massive environmental upgrade.
Yeah.
Potting soil is designed to be light, airy, well-draining. That reduces the risk of rot. And, crucially, it's generally sterile when you buy it.
A clean slate.
A clean slate. The last thing an open wound needs is a hostile microbial environment. This is like moving the patient from a dirty floor into a sterile operating room. It gives the rooting hormone time to work before an infection takes hold.
Which brings us to what the notes suggest is the single most important change of all, the environmental control, the humidity dome.
The keystone. This is the ultimate defense against the desiccation that killed round one.
Walk us through the physics here. Why does a plant with no roots need that much humidity?
It's all about water loss. Plants are constantly losing water vapor through their leaves and stems. It's a process called transpiration.
It's like they're sweating.
Kind of, yeah. And in a normal room, that water loss is constant. But a cutting with no roots can't drink from the soil to replace what it's losing.
So it just sweats itself to death.
It literally dries out from the inside. It happens in days, sometimes.
So the dome stops that. It creates an equilibrium.
Precisely. The dome traps the humidity from the soil and the plant, creating this little microclimate that's at nearly 100% relative humidity.
So the air is completely saturated with water.
Saturated. And when the air around the plant is already full of moisture, the plant physically can't lose any more water through transpiration.
It basically puts the brakes on the drying out process.
It stops it cold. The dome is like a life support system. It buys the cutting the crucial time it needs, 4 to 8 weeks, for the hormones to work and for those new roots to finally establish themselves.
And the gardener's notes show that this isn't a set it and forget it thing. They had a strict protocol for monitoring it.
Oh yeah, it's an intensive care unit.
They were checking soil moisture, looking for fungus, only watering when absolutely necessary because the high humidity means the soil stays wet longer.
Total commitment for that whole 4 to 8 week timeline.
Yeah.
It's the difference between passive waiting and active daily management of the environment.
Because if anything in that dome goes wrong, if it gets too dry or too wet and moldy,
The whole system collapses. This aggressive method requires equally aggressive and precise management. You have to keep that microclimate perfectly stable until the new roots can take over.
So if we try to connect all this to the bigger picture, the real lesson here is that success isn't just about using good techniques.
No, it's about balancing them. It's a strategic balance of forces,
They used wounding to increase the potential for growth.
which created a huge risk.
And then they immediately used the hormone in the dome to manage the very risks that they had just introduced.
Yes, it's a perfect loop of action and mitigation.
So what this really means then is the difference between failure and success was all about protecting that vulnerable cambium layer. They went from just exposing it to actively building a fortress around it for that entire critical phase.
And this raises a really interesting question for us, outside the greenhouse. How often in our own projects or our work do we focus only on increasing the potential for success, taking that big, aggressive step, without immediately managing the new vulnerability that step creates? True mastery seems to be in balancing that push for opportunity with the framework needed to mitigate the risk.